Well, thank you, everybody. This is Pure Momentum Network, and this is Deborah Tavares of Stop the Crime. The website is stopthecrime.net, and I would like to welcome you all to this hour of today's program, keeping in mind that the second hour is for those that sign up, and we hope that you will, because today's program is going to be exceedingly important, as they all are. We're going to be talking about what many people call UN Agenda 21 or Future Earth, but we're really actually going to break it down because these are policies coming out of the executive branch in Washington, D.C. via executive orders and through corporate structures and the fines, penalties, regulations, and restrictions that many of you are becoming aware of are all corporate statutes. Now, I want to just open up the show today because we're going to cover a number of local meetings that we have been attending here in Northern California. Again, we're about an hour north of the Golden Gate Bridge in Sonoma County. And we have some extremely aggressive corporate policies through the corporate system that has woven its way into local government, state government, and is federal government, which we now call USA Inc. This is an extremely dangerous, predatory system, and it's sucking the life out of all of our local communities and all of the individual private businesses. And what we're going to do, I have Al Whitney as our co-host today, and Al and I are going to be discussing what we see in these local meetings. The second hour is critical because we're going to be giving some detailed solutions on how you cannot consent. So right now, we're going to play a short clip. You can find it on YouTube. It's called "Why Can't Chuck Get His Business Off the Ground?"
Just about everyone knows that government at every level is requiring more and more Americans to get a government-issued license before they can earn an honest living. In the 1950s, well, only about 1 in 20 Americans needed the government's blessing to do their job. Today, that number is more than 1 in 3, and government puts all kinds of requirements on would-be entrepreneurs, making it harder for these entrepreneurs to start and grow small businesses. Entrepreneurs like Chuck here. This is Chuck. Oh, Chuck hates his job. But Chuck has an idea.
I'm going to fix computers in my garage and sell them for low prices.
Chuck.
My business will create new jobs for my community.
Chuck, old boy.
And give more young people access to computers. And then once my business really gets going, I can expand into a commercial space and...
You live in Milwaukee.
So?
Actually, in Milwaukee, starting a business in your home means you can't work in your garage, can't have any employees, can't have any signs, and can't take deliveries.
What?
Unless you come up with the money for a commercial lease right away, you won't be starting your business at all.
Well, if Milwaukee won't have me, I'm going to start my business somewhere else.
That's the spirit.
What Los Angeles needs is a good used bookstore.
Actually, believe it or not, Los Angeles treats used bookshops like they were strip clubs or gun shops. You'll need a permit from the police to operate. You'll have to be fingerprinted. Anyone who sells you books may need to be fingerprinted too. For every book you buy, you'll have to stamp it with an individualized number that corresponds to a bill of sale that identifies the book and who it came from. The police get to inspect those bills of sale, and hold on, you'll also have to hold books for at least 30 days before you sell them, just in case the police have any questions.
But the First Amendment to the Constitution protects my...
The First Amendment? Well, how quaint. And hey, you're not planning on selling that copy of the Constitution to anyone, are you, Chuck?
Oh, for Pete's sake.
Balloon advertising? Well, that's an idea that's on the rise. Maybe you're onto something here, Chuck. But remember, Chuck, entrepreneurs aren't the only ones who have ideas. Bureaucrats have them too.
Here in Houston, you're only allowed to use balloons to sell cars, or if you have a message that doesn't sell anything at all.
That's ridiculous.
You're right. All balloons now banned in Houston.
Maybe Houston just ain't your kind of place, Chuck. How about D.C.? Oh, want to be an interior designer, huh? Not too bad. Not too bad at all. But in Washington, D.C., you'll need a license before you can tell people where to put those paintings, pillars, and planters.
But that doesn't make any sense.
Actually, that makes a ton of sense. And dollars, too. You see, existing interior designers lobbied the city to make all new interior designers, but none of the current ones, take a test and pay a bunch of money to go into the interior design business. It's a win-win for the industry and the government. Interior designers get to keep out the competition, and government gets to make money. Don't go ruining a good thing by trying to lower prices for consumers now. Now you're talking, Chuck. Miami. Nice and sunny down there. Valencia oranges and lots of tourists, too. You want to be a street vendor, huh? Well, you just need to get a little old permission slip from the city government. Ready, Chuck? Let's go. Here's all you'll need.
An occupational license from the city of Miami. An occupational license from Miami-Dade County. A license from the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation if you want to sell prepared food. Or, if you want to sell prepackaged food, a license from the Florida Department of Agriculture. Or if you want to sell gum, another license from the city of Miami. A city of Miami tax certificate. A state of Florida tax certificate. A certification from the Florida Department of Revenue that all your taxes have been paid. A copy of the current Florida Department of Motor Vehicles registration for your cart. A license plate for your cart. A cart certification form signed by 3 different bureaucrats from 3 different departments, and $500,000 in insurance coverage for any bodily injury or property damage caused by your vending.
Got all your paperwork together, Chuck?
Yes.
Great! Now you're entitled to enter the street vendor lottery. If you're lucky enough to win, you'll be allowed to start your business. And the winner is... Oh! Not you. Tough luck, Chuck. This is still Chuck. He still hates his job. Any ideas left, guy?
Oh. I'm just going to sell the leftover stuff from my computer business and go back to my old job.
Actually...
What?
If you want to close a business in Milwaukee, you'll need a government-issued license for that, too. And you'll have to give the government an itemized inventory every day of everything you're selling. Sorry, guy. That's just the cost of doing business. Or of, going out of business.
Oh, I just give up.
Excellent. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got to go fix this unemployment problem.
Want to help people like Chuck? Visit www.ij.org to learn more and support IJ's work protecting economic liberty.
Thank you for listening. You've just heard the short YouTube clip, Why Can't Chuck Get His Business Off the Ground? Again, you can listen to it again and pass it around to your friends as well as this show. And Al, I know that you have some comments to make about that YouTube.
Yeah, that's a real important YouTube. A lot of people who watch it don't really understand what it is that are all these restrictions coming from all these cities or counties. And basically, what people need to understand is the solution to America's job problems does not lie with budget-busting, federally mandated programs. What is needed are specific reforms that wouldn't cost taxpayers, but would create a broader tax base for cash-strapped cities and states, and would provide opportunity for millions of Americans who worry about where their next paycheck is coming from. Now, this is right from that YouTube. When the people get to the YouTube, they can click on for more information. And that YouTube was produced by an Institute for Justice. And it's an excellent example of what's going on with local jobs. Let me read a brief section. As demonstrated by a series of 8 new reports issued in October 2010 by the Virginia-based Institute for Justice, one of the principal obstacles to creating new jobs in entrepreneurial activity in cities across the country is the complex maze of regulations cities and states impose on small businesses. The Institute for Justice's city study reports are filled with real-world examples of specific restrictions that often make it impossible for entrepreneurs to create jobs for themselves, let alone for others.
Well, Al, I think that's a good point, but I will also say, and I know that you agree, that is the intention. They're collapsing the economy in the United States and globally, as a matter of fact, and they're putting small local businesses out of business. In fact, just recently, I attended a local town hall meeting where the discussion was a recent closure of our local hospital. And there were doctors and nurses there. It was a all-service hospital, critical emergency, beds, treatments of infectious diseases, etc. And it is now boarded up. It has locks on the main doors, and the hospital is pleading with the local city council to help with the conversation with the hospital board of directors to try to reopen this hospital, because they've lost in the last few weeks over 250 jobs. And many of the small little businesses, of course, in the community, the little coffee shops, the sandwich shops, have now recognized a tremendous hit to their revenue and their income. And what is so interesting is I was listening to the doctors and nurses talk about the maze of red tape, the state and federal regulations, and the insurance regulations that preclude this hospital from taking advantage of many of the various types of health insurance programs that the larger hospitals are able to accommodate. So we see a small local hospital being pushed out and centralized. In other words, big hospitals are gobbling this little hospital up, and it's certainly creating our community into a regionalized community. In fact, many people may have heard about the regionalization of One Bay Area, which is the San Francisco area. They're in the process right now of erasing all the borders of all of our little unique individual towns. And we're to be centralized and called One Bay Area. And with this is why Chuck can't get his business off the ground.
Well, you know, this strategy has been ongoing for actually more than a century. And when I read about the beginning of the first agency, federal agency, and I believe that was the Interstate Commerce Commission, that was established by the robber barons who were putting up railroads. And there was competition. They wanted the rail to move their products around. And there were small businesses that were competitions for the robber barons. So they used the agency system, and they've doing this across the country for a century, to set up rules and regulations that the little guy can't meet, that only the big guy can afford to abide by or afford these rules and regulations. Monsanto's done it. This has been done, Deborah, I know you're aware of this. This has been done to get rid of the little guy, which the robber barons consider competition, and put the little guy out of business so that the multinational corporations can control all commerce.
Well, we see that happening across the country. Yep. In that Tyson Foods recently moved a large portion of their poultry business to China. Yep. and have eliminated many farms and ranches in Arkansas and other areas of the United States from raising the birds for production for Tyson Foods. We've been seeing multinational and international corporations moving out of the United States, and by the droves. In fact, we call it job loss and in California, because of course California has a very unfriendly business environment, to say the least. In fact, Al, I was just looking at an article yesterday, and it says there's a senator that has introduced a bill to test out taxing motorists for every mile they drive. And this is another way in which small businesses are getting left in the dust, because when you look at all the ways in which they plan to tax us and bring in new revenue streams for the corporate structure, they're stomping on everybody. And it says here in this article that the California legislature is looking at a voluntary program that would tax motorists for every mile they drive. It talks about how this Democrat in Concord, California, introduced a bill to test out the vehicle miles traveled, VTM tax, they call it, because the state's gas tax was no longer bringing in the revenue it used to due to people driving more fuel-efficient vehicles.
And electric cars. I was also told the more people buy electric cars, see, there is no gas tax with an electric car.
Well, that's exactly right. And now what they're doing is they're saying that they need this program. It's being modeled after programs that are currently in Oregon and Washington State. And they say, quote, that they want to do as Washington and Oregon has done in a much bigger state with much longer commutes to make sure that we find out whether it would work, whether the public would like it or not. But what is really happening here is they're telling the people the reason that we have to tax you for every mile that you've driven. And by the way, they will use the black boxes in your vehicles to ascertain the number of miles you've driven, because people have asked that question, how will they know? But what they're saying is there's not enough gas tax revenue to significantly and to make the required road maintenance and repairs that California needs, because our entire road infrastructure, particularly in the rural areas, is turning into gravel, potholes. In fact, that was a meeting that I attended. And while you hear me talk about this on today's show, about the meetings that we've attended, I would recommend that all of you go to a couple of meetings within your local community. Just go to your city council website, or to your water agency website, or your school board website. Any agency in your community, they have meetings. And I can tell you, there's no quicker way to understand this corporate structure that Al and I are going to speak to in greater detail here in a moment or two. But what I'm attempting to do right now is to let you know some of the things that are occurring here in Northern California. We're on steroids here with the corporate takeover through climate action plans that is requiring that we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, which is, of course, all political scientific fraud. And go to stopthecrime.net. We have a climate action plan link at the top of the home page so that you can get into more of the details about these plans that are finding their way in all levels of government, state, local, federal. They're everywhere. But this gas tax here that's being proposed now in California is being sold for the benefit of road repair and road maintenance. And Al, we've always talked about the fact, because in the Silent Weapons Quiet Wars document that we have on our website, they always talk about the stated goals and the real goals. And the gas tax in California has been literally ripped off by the Metropolitan Transit Agency that has been redirecting much of the gas tax revenue into these smart growth cities that they're trying to move all rural people that live in the country into these designated areas where there is transit, where there's rail, and where there is multi-level housing and mixed office space use. They're literally corralling us into a more manageable incarceration. This is a prison of and for the people, so that they can manage us, so that they can surveil us, because all the cameras are being set up everywhere, where we'll be closer to all of the cell towers, the smart meters, all of the spy equipment and military equipment for monitoring, watching us. They even have what they call a flat panel array that is was always military use on the enemy and is being used now because, of course, we're the enemy. And what that system does is the beams on these little systems can bend. They can literally look right in and through all structures and record everything that it sees you do inside your buildings. And I know, Al, that we're in just horrifically horrible, predatory times under this corporate structure.
Well, and when, I think if people follow Catherine Austin Fitts, who's an economist, and Ellen Brown, who's an attorney promoting state banks, they both will have told the public many, 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 many times that the money has been moved to Wall Street, and that Wall Street and the Federal Reserve are not going to fix Main Street. They have no plans of bringing business back, making our communities prosperous. That is not part of their agenda. The only way that would happen is if we, the people who live in these communities, understand local economics and could convince our local governments to switch their support rather than impeding local businesses, assisting local businesses. And this is not going to be easy, as you know, Deborah, because they somehow see local businesses as revenue streams for them.
Well, that's a good point. And I'll tell you what I observed at a recent meeting. Again, why it's a good thing to go to these meetings. There was a private contractor that has had a set of plans. He wants to build a single-family house next to 2 homes that were recently constructed within the last 6 months. He's the last vacant property within about a mile circumference of his location. And I can say to you that here's this man who has spent all this money on these plans, not envisioning that he would have any problems with the city. But I can tell you they've denied him 3 times. And it was a split vote on the design review board that sadly would not allow him to build, even though one of the design review board members said, I can't vote against his plan because there's nothing in the ordinance that he is violating. He is following the requirements of design. And what I hear from other members is that they are creating rules and regulations that exceed what is written. And we're going to pick this up, why this is an important conversation, on the other side of the Pure Momentum Network break. Again, this is Deborah Tavares, your host. We're joined with Al Whitney, the co-host, and we're breaking down the corporate structure and how it works in your local community. We'll be talking about ways you can resist, and more importantly, you've got to show up. Your absence to meetings and being involved locally is your permission to this tyrannical, dangerous system that we're all finding ourselves in. So we're looking forward to picking this up. Thank you.
An amount necessary or sufficient to have a significant effect or to achieve a result. This is critical mass.
Greetings, fellow organic beings on planet Earth. My name is Pamela Tartar. I host Critical Mass on Pure Momentum Network. My awareness tells me humanity is reaching a tipping point. A choice must be made. Either we choose continuing under ever-worsening tyranny, or we stand up in our humanity and create a new world of love, abundance, compassion, empathy, and all the human attributes and features. I invite you to join me as we explore who we are and find tools inside us, enabling us to stand tall and strong against the opposition. Now is the time. Pamela Tartar, Critical Mass.
Hello, everyone. This is Sophia Smallstorm inviting you to listen and share with me on Pure Momentum Network, my show called Speed of Light. We are way too bogged down by darkness, heavy energy, and a sense of futility. We need to move into literally a new kind of momentum. Knowledge is one way to do this, and with knowledge comes freedom from the oppressive state of knowing nothing, which some people think is actually bliss. In my journey, exploring so many subjects and expanding my awareness of all that's going on, I have met amazing, wonderful, fascinating people. These are the people, researchers, many of them, that I want you to meet. They have taught me how to really see, and we have exchanged those ways of seeing together. I think this is really about coming together, how we come together in knowing each other and giving our friendship and support. Pure Momentum is a very different opportunity for me. It's just an inner feeling I have, and I'd like you to be a part of it.
Thank you for joining us again on the Pure Momentum Network. This is Deborah Tavares, StopTheCrime.net, with my co-host Al Whitney with the Anti-Corruption Society. And we were talking about a builder who has been unable to move forward with getting his permits to build a single-family house here in Northern California. And what I found so interesting when I attended a council meeting here is that the council meeting has said there's not enough building permits now being issued to continue with the set-aside funds that they need to ensure their water and sewer maintenance programs. And here they're denying the issuing of a single-family house because they're getting this person caught up in rules, regulations, and restrictions. And this man is fit to be tied, and he really does need to see the clip that all of you just heard. Why can't Chuck get his business off the ground? Because this man has lived in this community for 30 years. He's been a builder in this community for 30 years, and he's scratching his head wondering what on earth is going on.
Deborah, let me ask you, since you're familiar with the building industry, had he been permitted to build this structure, would that not have brought additional revenue to the city?
Well, absolutely. And that's what is so difficult to understand for the people that are familiar with this particular situation and more. He's not the only one.
How would that bring money? Maybe the people don't understand if they're not in the industry.
Well, certainly it brings in another ownership within the city. Property taxes, a portion of school taxes, a portion of local revenue tax through the property tax that's collected, as well as somebody else moving into the city that would shop locally, buy gas locally, create more revenue for the local economy, eat at the local restaurants, etc., and eliminate a vacant lot right now that is literally a weed. It's just weeds. In fact, the fire department has to go around to vacant properties, particularly since we're now in an engineered drought here in Northern California, and we're hearing continuously, because of the high fire risks, that we've got to clear shrubbery and weeds from our properties. So, we've got these vacant lots that builders want to build on. They can't. The fines and penalties are just too high. In fact, Al, I was just talking to a man that he has 20 acres, and we're here in Northern California where there are many, many vineyards. And he wanted to put in about 10 acres of grapes. And he had moved off rocks off his property. He was clearing it. He spent quite a bit of time with his own equipment and tractors getting his area ready for the grapes. When he went in to the powers that be to get his permission, he found out that he had to pay in advance $1 per vine as a tax. And he was looking to put in 28,000 vines in this area that he had made ready. He did not have the upfront cost, the 28,000 or the monies, $1 per vine. He did not have the upfront monies. So he abandoned his project. There's another way in which people cannot utilize their private properties.
Or they can't start their own business. I mean, he was going to bring revenue into them. And this is crazy. I mean, this really is crazy. They are cutting off their noses to spite their face, which makes us wonder if there is another agenda playing along in the background.
Well, of course, we know there is.
Yeah.
And in fact, right now, some of the other recent meetings that I've been attending, which is really, really something quite significant that the entire country and the globe is really experiencing now, and that's the scarcity of water. We have an engineered drought here in California, and other areas of the country are experiencing record storms and tremendous displacement as literally communities are wiped off the map. And we, of course, know that this is all deliberate, that the weather is completely weaponized, and we know that this is an attack upon all of us globally. But speaking to the engineered drought here in California, we've been having very intense meetings over the last few weeks because Governor Brown declared us as a water emergency. Now, he said initially that we needed to voluntarily reduce our water supply and our consumption by 20%. Well, what I find interesting, Al, is this is also in the climate action plans, reduction of water, because that's all part of the illusion of reducing your greenhouse gas emissions. It's increasing the idea of scarcity and reducing all use of all energy, including water.
You know what's even worse, Deborah? They're not only creating the illusion, they are blocking solutions. There is a gentleman in California, and I've been to his website. His name is Tom Murphy. He created a system. I think people can probably Google Tom Murphy Reclamator. He created a system in response to the Clean Water Act, whereas a property, probably this wouldn't work if you had a lot of houses close together, but it would work on many properties, particularly rural properties, where you can install a system and reclaim your water. His system purifies the water completely and allows you to reuse your own gray water. Now, he could not get that off the ground. In fact, he testified that he had a realtor with rural property, quite a few acres, who built a house and put this system in so she could recycle her own water, reuse her own water. They made her take it out. So that leaves us to ponder, why would they block technology that would help solve water shortage issues? Why would they do that? And then they have to ask yourself, is it because they want to keep the illusion of scarcity, or is it because they want to ensure their ability to put fluoride in our water?
Well, all of the above. Of course, a system like that would not, in fact, it's been proven up, at least to this point, the technology's they're not capable of eliminating a lot of the prions and the filtration systems that are available to reduce the fluoride does not eliminate all the fluoride. In fact, what I find interesting about this conversation is in the NWO Exposed 1969, that is a source document under the source document tab of stopthecrime.net. Once again, it's entitled NWO Exposed 1969. And they spoke about how they would even get us to re-drink our used water.
Well, I'm not sure that system wouldn't work, though, Deborah. I've seen it. I think it is a possibility.
Well, this is an engineered water scarcity.
Yes, it is.
We have plenty of water.
Yes.
So what is this type of system doing? Impoverishing people, making them install additional systems to get the water that they have available, but won't let them access. And to that extent, these water meetings I've gone to, we right now here in Sonoma County, the different cities have different levels of mandatory water conservation stages. And there's stages 1, stage 2, and stage 3. And right now, we are in stage 2, where we have a required 20% reduction of water. Some areas now here are in stage 3. It's determined by what lake is servicing their water supply and what levels of groundwater, of course, have increased the lake's level. But what I want to tell you is what they're telling us we must do under these stages. Now, this is what's required under every stage, whether it's voluntary or mandatory. And we're only able to water or irrigate our outdoors. If you have an even house address, you can only irrigate your landscaping Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturdays. And odd addresses can only irrigate outdoors Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. But here's the big problem. There's no outdoor irrigation on Mondays. So they're getting us used to following these rules, but it gets more restrictive as we go down this list. It says that they prohibit non-commercial washing of privately owned vehicles, trailers, boats, etc., except you can use a bucket. You can use a bucket to clean your car, but you cannot use a hose. You can use a hose if the nozzle has a shutoff valve, and you can only use it to rinse your vehicle. There are many restrictions. I'm only reading the highlights of a few. They're prohibiting the filling or building of new swimming pools. They will allow you to tap off your swimming pool to prevent damage to the pump and filter equipment. That's allowed, they say. But then they go on to say under stage 3, which we're heading for, because what I discovered is that the water agencies and our governor have all partnered with NASA, the Scripps Institute, and NOAA. And all of those corporate agencies are all listed on Dun & Bradstreet, private corporations for profit. They do not work for us, and they are all engaged in weather modification. You can type in weather modification NASA, and you will find that it is a predatory agency. And here's some other things that they will not allow us to do now in California under stage 3. You're prohibited from irrigating any lawn, residential, commercial, or industrial, with water at any time, day or night. In fact, they now have programs that they call Cash for Grass. They will give you 50 cents per square foot of turf that you remove from your property, up to $1,000 total rebate. The next is they prohibit planting of any new landscaping except designated and approved drought-resistant landscaping prescribed by the city manager or designated representative. So there's more control. They're even going to decide if you can plant a little bush in on your property. And this one really is quite troubling. They're prohibiting planting of all new annual plants, such as vegetables.
Wow.
So when you look at this list and you realize that they have all of these programs in place, this cash for grass, they're handing out also, Al, buckets, new buckets, very nice quality buckets. And in these buckets, they'll have a low flow, brand new shower head replacement. They'll have a device you can put on your kitchen faucet to reduce the water flow. And other gadgets, they have a little timer that you can put inside your shower that will tell you when you've exceeded the amount of recommended shower time, which is not to exceed 5 minutes. And they're giving all these little buckets away with all these freebies. And when I asked who's paying for all of this, I was told the ratepayers. And they're also including grants to help them give these gifts. They literally last week, during this bucket handout of all these little freebies, had blocks of lined people in their vehicles waiting to get their free handout. They think it's free. They don't ask the questions, who's paying for it. And what is so interesting is because all the ratepayers, all the water ratepayers are paying for this, many don't even realize these giveaways are occurring, and they're not, this is not equity, an equitable program, which of course is just all an illusion to increase rates, to give free things out, to take grants, to again allow further free programs, And people are just lining up around blocks to get this free stuff, as the bigger story is they've got to eliminate their grass. They can't water their landscaping, no new swimming pools, all around the hidden reality that this is an engineered drought created by the perpetrators that the state has hired to help them.
Yes, and that's real important. And when you understand that it's a corporate construct, it's a corporate structure. And what's so really nefarious about the fact that they've created a network of corporations and they're falsely calling them government is that they have given these guys the ability right now, until we recognize what we're dealing with, they have given them the ability to write any kind of rule, regulations. There's no limit to what they can do. We have not established a limit. The way they limit themselves is they send out surveys to see how much the market will bear, how much we're willing to pay. But this is why the system is so corrupt, because they can make it a restriction. For instance, many are saying that they pass laws to prohibit us from using incandescent light bulbs. Now, if I was selling compact fluorescents, if that was my corporation, I would be willing to lobby Congress and pay money to get that law passed, because that would be a huge windfall for me. This is what happens when you have something that is a corporation passing as a government and forcing rules and restrictions that bring profit to their friends at our expense.
Well, Al, in the case of the water, when you talk about enforcement, one of the meetings I attended, they were talking about how they're using the carrot to encourage people to restrict their water use, and particularly where areas are now under mandatory restriction of water use. They actually want neighbors to report if they see any off-scheduled watering or any lawns that are being watered. In fact, they're also talking about not watering community recreation centers where they have large turf areas where kids play soccer and different games on the weekend. They're talking about letting those areas go brown. They say go brown. But what they say is we're using the carrot right now on people that aren't following the restrictions and the guidelines. And so I asked them, when you stop using the carrot, what does that look like? And in front of about 100 people, the man sort of grimaced and said, well, we have the enforcement ability to turn off the water, So we're dealing with such a dangerous reality that honestly, if people do not get engaged quickly and stop some of what they can, there's no end, as you were just saying, Al, there's no end to the restrictions and the laws that they're going to attempt to enforce on us. There's no end.
And that's so important, Deborah. There's no limits. They talk about limits to growth. There's no limits to the growth of these corporations and these corporate governments. Limits to growth, they always infer that we have too many people, we're running out of resources. What I see is a lack of limits to growth of corporations and of corporate governments. Unless we put an end to it, they are going to continue to parasite, and there's no better word that I can think of, off the general population until they extract all the energy, all the wealth, all the products, everything that we have, it will be gone. And then, of course, the government will have to shrink because there won't be anybody else to tax, fine, or penalize.
Well, that's true. And for many that are listening, we know, too, that there are advanced technologies that have been turned upon us. We're the enemy of the state. You can look at Senate Report 93549 and the Clearfield document under the USA Inc. tab on stopthecrime.net. And many of us realize it is more horrific than just putting the spokes in the corporate structure locally. But we've got to do all we can. We've got the chemtrailing, we've got the poisoning of the water supply, the food supply, and this is all considered legal in this corporate construct that is consuming us. And Al, I know we've talked about the fact that corporations do not recognize life, all life, human life, animal life, insect life. There's no recognition of anything alive. We're dead to the corporations, and that means death to us because we're not recognized.
Well, and people need to understand, and this is a difficult concept to get. What is a corporation? It is a piece of paper with some writing on it in a safe somewhere, and the writing is called a corporate charter. It's a fiction. There is no such thing as a living corporation. A corporation is just a business model. It is a fiction. And yes, we work for corporations, we take their paychecks, yada, yada. But in reality, corporations are not needed for humanity to do business, nor are they needed for our life to continue and be prosperous. They are actually an obstacle that we are now facing that is very difficult to overcome.
Well, that's true. In fact, what I would recommend everybody do is read The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America by retired Judge Dale, and also The Matrix and the U.S. Constitution, also by retired Judge Dale. You can find these as free downloads on the homepage of stopthecrime.net. There are links to Al's website, the Anti-Corruption Society, and you can cross-reference the various articles that we both post. I cannot at this moment recommend a more important read. Do you need to accept everything in that read? Absolutely not. But I'll tell you, you can verify what is in that Great American Adventure, Secrets of America by Judge Dale, as I have, many of the points that I've wanted to confirm, and I've confirmed them. And so we have been subdued by lack of history, by our true history. We never knew or were taught what happened in 1933. We were never really taught what the importance of the Federal Reserve was to the taking of America back in 1913.
In fact, there's a video people can go watch, USA Inc., about the thieves who stole our government. And the reality that we have right now is a private corporation owns our country. A private corporation manages the money for our country, the Federal Reserve. A private corporation prints money, and a private corporation, the Federal Reserve, charges us for the use of that money. So what we have, we're living in a private construct, a private corporate construct that's passing itself off as a representative government, which it is not. I know Deborah knows about the book called They Own It All, including
Yes.
you, and it points out that if it's a private corporation, it's not real money. When you buy something, who owns it if you're using their money to buy it?
Well, it's just debt notes. We know the Federal Reserve notes that we all have in our wallets and our bank accounts, they're nothing but debt notes. We have been permanently enslaved without realizing it because no one was taught in school what the Federal Reserve notes mean. In fact, Al, I think you'd agree, one of the most important YouTubes that I can recommend is entitled Secrets of the Federal Reserve by Eustace Mullins,
Yes.
E-U-S-T-A-C-E, Mullins, M-U-L-L-I-N-S. Again, that is Secrets of the Federal Reserve. Just type it in on YouTube. I would recommend watching that. And then there are a series of other conferences that Eustace Mullins has done. He is now since gone, but we have him We have him forever in his conferences and his YouTubes. So I would recommend that everybody pay attention to his conferences. But what I also wanted to talk about, again, what does this look like on a local level? Well, again, from local meetings and then reading the book, The Great American Adventure, Secrets of America by Judge Dale, I think you'll start to see how this corporate structure has taken over your local government. You do not have a local representative government. You do not have public servants. You have public officials. And that is why when you go to a council meeting or a board of supervisors meeting or to a water board meeting, it doesn't matter what corporate structured meeting you go to, you are put up with as the public. And yes, you're given the illusion that you can speak. You are allowed to speak. We're given 3 minutes at our local council meetings, but that's it. They're not going to have a reciprocal dialogue with you. They will not talk about a concern. I have seen people go up to the mic in tears and talk about something that you as the public listening to them would want to say something to them.
Yes, and when you say the word public officials, Deborah, as you and I have researched this, public officials does not mean that they're an officer over you, although they would like you to believe that. The term public officials means they're an officer of the corporation. And that's important for people to make that distinction. They're officers of a private corporation. And their control over you is what we're going to talk about in the next hour, how we make that distinction and to our own benefit.
That's right. As a matter of fact, we are nearing the conclusion of this first hour's radio show. The second hour, as you just said, Al, is going to be more specifics on how to not consent. But I can tell you all that are listening, go to stopthecrime.net to the Climate Action Plan page, and you will see notice to public corporate employees. And download this, become familiar with that 2-page notice and the climate action plans. We're going to talk in greater detail to this. I thank all of you for listening. Subscribe to the second hour. This is the Pure Momentum Network. This is Deborah Tavares, Stop the Crime, with stopthecrime.net, joined by my co-host Al Whitney of the Anti-Corruption Society. And we're looking forward to the second hour where we're going to give you more details on how you cannot consent. Thank you for listening.
We invite all our listeners to join us in the members section for the second hour of all our shows. We encourage you to click on the subscribe button, choose a membership type, pay with PayPal, and voila, you're a member. Enjoy all Pure Momentum Network material, the second hour of all talk shows, extra interviews, and all archives.